Joining us today, my name is Scott Salkin. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Allbound, headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. We're here to talk about how you can supercharge recurring revenue with channel partners. So we're excited to be part of the Digital Growth Conference 2017. And here joining me today is John Hunter, who's the Executive Vice President of Worldwide Sales for BMC. So we're both here in the room in Phoenix, and what we're going to talk to you about today is we're going to dive into partnerships. Kind of a critical topic and one that's been part of business for decades and decades, and as far as you go back, and has changed quite a bit now with the subscription and channel economy. But here's a wrong direction. Here's a reason that channel partnerships and partnerships in general we look at as being so important. These are stats taken directly from a study by the World Trade Organization. It talks about there are more than 100 million businesses around the world that rely on reseller ecosystems to go to market. So that's a huge, huge number. And in B2B transactions, that represents almost 75% or more than 75% of all B2B transactions worldwide. Not only when it comes to product, but also when it comes to services. We're seeing that more and more. So, a lot of us know the name Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, kind of the guy who started the whole SaaS movement years ago, more than a decade ago. And he even says himself, businesses in any industry, any market can only grow so far with direct sales alone. And there are some pretty good reasons for that. And one of the things I really like to tell people when we get into a webinar, an event like this, when we're talking about the value of channel, is to take a second and pause and look around the room that you're sitting in and really kind of try and figure out, is there anything in that room that you have bought directly from the manufacturer? And the answer I often get from people is, well, yeah, I'm sitting here with the MacBook. I bought this directly from Apple. And yes, that's true probably. But even when we look at Apple and we look at what Apple does within their ecosystem, we think about the partnerships that they engage in. A couple examples are those are Intel. You've got Intel Core Pentium processors inside. Apple's a reseller for them, a distribution partner basically. You've got Toshiba and their hard drives that Apple has within their devices. But then Apple also goes to market, not only through themselves, but through companies like Best Buy to reach more customers in different geographies and to reach their B2C customers. They also go to market through companies like Insight and CDW and big resellers like that who can help them get into some bigger companies and sell in bulk. And then even recently, we see companies like Nike getting involved with Apple on things like the Apple Watch to help them reach into different markets or even be different types of distribution partners. So the channel's huge. The channel is something that impacts everyone, and the reasons here are obvious, and these three things are something I actually picked up from the guy sitting next to me, John Hunter, where we talk about speed, efficiency, and agility. And I'll let John talk about that for a second.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. With my background, years at CA Technologies, OpenText, and now transforming the digital service management business unit at BMC, we've always found that helping customers gain revenue, reduce cycle time, access new markets is the number one objective they want to hear. And they don't really want to talk about products and widgets and features. They want to really understand business outcomes. Of course, they're always assuming that you're going to reduce the complexity, you're going to reduce the operating expense, and you're going to leave behind a more nimble, more responsive environment. And it still just surprises me how many sellers and how many institutions really feel that they can go alone on that journey. It's just impossible. Companies aren't built for it. It requires an open mind and an open partnership strategy to help deliver on these key customer initiatives.
Yeah, and when you think about speed, efficiency, agility, we kind of look at those things as being the three top issues that a partner channel can solve for a business. When it comes to accelerating your sales cycles, when it comes to growing faster while lowering costs, when it comes to being agile enough to respond to market changes and get into new markets. So when you're talking up the ladder and you go and talk to those executives in the organization, you're talking about the channel, there's some really important key messages from a high level that really covers. So one thing we're going to be talking about today, though, diving a little bit further into, is how partners help customers. And something I heard just a couple of days ago at another conference I spoke at was regards to businesses moving from measuring itself based on bookings to measuring themselves based on business. if that makes sense to you. So bookings to business, where it's no longer just about the revenue that you're driving and the margins you're getting up front, but also how you're keeping customers in the subscription economy and reducing churn. And so I'm going to go back to that Apple example real fast and show you how they use partners to actually deliver better service to their customers. These days it's all about delivering outcomes and delivering value for those customers. And when you even look at companies like Apple, who, yes, go heavily through a direct model, when they talk about getting the best possible outcomes out of their products, they say that by putting those products in the very best hands, which actually is those Apple consultants and the folks that are working with them as resellers, as service providers, as consulting partners, as training partners, putting your product into those people's hands is how you get the best results. So when we look at that perspective, when we look at outcomes and churn and keeping customers, nowhere is that more important these days than in the cloud and subscription economy, where, oftentimes, and, when you look at valuations, you look at how you grow a company, you look at how you're going to, manage cash flow and continue to grow, you look at recurring revenue. Recurring revenue is the currency that's looked at as the gold mine in recurring revenue economy. So we're going to talk real fast before we dive into how you build a channel program and some of the perspectives there, as some of the big myths that are out there. And I think these are really important to cover because they've been around for a while. They've been around for quite a while now. As companies are still trying to get over a lot of these. And John and I will kind of talk through these. Number one, I think, is, partner programs most folks look at as being extremely complex and expensive and hard to measure. And, that's a falsity. These days, with technology, with innovation, with products and solutions and services that are out there, putting a partner program together is easier than it ever has been and less expensive than it ever has been. And the results are still the same, if not better. Partner programs have for a long time been really only valuable for demand generation, bookings, and revenue. In a few minutes, we're going to talk to you about why that's false and how partner programs are actually relying and doing less around demand generation and more around customer success. So, having those partners in there aren't just about bookings, again, but it's about business. Number three is, needing to have a lot of partners for a partner program to be successful. Not true. We see so many partner programs these days that are, still relying on that 90-10 rule or that 80-20 rule, where they may have 100 partners or 1,000 partners, but only maybe 10 or 100 are actually active and engaged. Well, maybe it's more effective to have less partners so you can put more focus into. And the last couple here are about being prepared, for your partners to be secretive and overprotective of prospects and customer data. Not true anymore. You're starting to see more and more partner-to-partner engagement and more companies opening up more and being more transparent about the data that they're using. And a lot of that's because, number five, partners are becoming more and more embedded in the team, and you see less of partner programs being managed separately and having a whole separate stack. That has to do a lot with culture. So some myths out there that we want to solve, and we're going to help companies, take a look at a perspective where it's not really about if you want to start a partner program, but really thinking about more so as when. And when do you start building that, and how do you do it? So starting right off the bat, here, you got to think about your business as already basically being a channel. I mean, you have a channel in your business right now. If you think of the folks that are within your organization, your business is an ecosystem. From the individual folks you have working for your company to the company as a whole, there are technology partners. There are folks who are, engaged in learning about your technology. There are people working with the different individuals within your company. You already have a channel. So if that's the case, how do you build what we call a full customer lifecycle partner program that accelerates recurring revenue? So what we're talking about here is a partner program that, again, is not just focused on pre-sales, but on delivering those experiences for your entire organization. One of the things you really have to think about with building a channel, and I'll let John talk about this a little bit too, is that you're basically building a geographically dispersed volunteer sales team. And when you're doing that, you've got to think about how that culturally fits into your company.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think you have to take inventory of your values. It really starts with having a point of view, making sure you understand your value system internally, making sure that you really embrace modern leadership topics of building trust and understanding what's going on in this market. No matter who you are listening today, you need to know you're going into a market that's been oversold and underdelivered. So you have to be authentic in everything you say. You have to really embrace that your values and your partner's values are aligned. And then get those statements and those values and those goals posted so you and your partners can really understand what's in it for them, WIFM. When a partner knows and has complete transparency, as Scott just said, into what makes your company tick, you have that authentic message. You have that fact that you solve customer problems. That's what it's all about. That leads to that reoccurring revenue and that subscription economy. It's a good piece of evidence of that is the fact there is no more renewals. The renewal concept is dead. It's about complete adoption, delighting customers, and a lot of times we just don't see how our own ecosystem and our partners' ecosystem can be a force multiplier in our sales efforts.
Yeah, so if you're building a team that's going to be dispersed, that aren't going to be sitting there in your office, they're going to be somewhat volunteers because oftentimes they don't get paid until that deal is closed, and sometimes after that deal is closed, and how they keep a customer. You've got to look at, how you engage those partners and keep them engaged or integrated with your organization. For too long, partners have been left kind of on an island to fight for survival. You've got so many of them, and they're not aligned with your company that they're kind of left out on their own. And that's probably been one of the biggest problems organizations have had in building programs, is that they put those partners out to fight for themselves. So one of the biggest things we talk about in trying to combat that is looking at partners more as people and taking that people part of the business and bringing it back in. Partners oftentimes are referred to as companies. Hey, we sell through company X, we sell through company Y. Well, how do you look at the actual individuals within those organizations, within those companies? And like John said, bring them into your culture, show them your values, bring them into, what you guys are actually doing, the values that are posted on your walls. How do you get them engaged with that? And one of the first things that we talk about where it starts is recruiting. Finding the right partners, building the right personas, just as you would with customers, and having those kind of symbiotic relationships where both benefit. You were mentioning something yesterday about, it's got to be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than when you run in your channel liaison and they're all green in their measurements and the company's in red, or you miss a quarter or you miss a month, and somewhere along the way you become misaligned with what the main thing is. The main thing has to be upfront, planned, budgeted, and celebrated. And too often, we don't do our budgets correctly. We don't bring in the partners and share with them our biggest fears, our biggest upside, our biggest downside, and build that into a modern platform and then share it. It requires really strong modern leadership. It requires an open mind, and it requires having a long-term plan for your company.
Heard folks come to us before who say, hey, listen, we've got these partners that, they won't share their data with us, and they won't let us, work on pipeline together. They just want to be able to go out there and sell product, and they really engage with us. My question goes back to the manufacturer there, the one who has the partner, says, well, is that really a partner? Is it really a partner as someone you want to work with? And are you really able to engage whether or not or measure whether or not they're effective outside of just the fact that they're bringing in revenue? So it's got to start by looking at how you build those relationships, how both of you benefit, not just yourselves, but the other partner, and how you're providing help to each other, whether it's getting into new verticals, being topical, providing expertise.
I can't help but hear you say that, Scott, and I think about those same companies that just don't have that culture of sharing, don't typically have a great culture internally of sharing and collaborating. I mean, you got to make sure that collaboration and trust and integrity is part of your culture of your company, and then go look for those similar values in those partners. That's where we've seen the best explosive growth through partners.
So we look at that, and we just talked about collaboration and culture. We actually look at there being 4 C's to success when you're building a partner program, and you've kind of got to keep these things in harmony. And they, like John said, they've got to be part of your business as well. You're not going to be able to bring in a great content marketing program, a collaborative ecosystem, and collaborative nature of working together. You're not going to really be able to focus on customer success or culture if you're not doing that internally. So how do you keep these things in harmony, and how do you actually go and extend the value of these things out to your channel system to keep your partners engaged? And so we're going to talk through each of these a little bit individually, but I'll start with the number one problem that we hear and that analysts that we've worked with have said is really impacting the channel and building partner programs, a big barrier to success is knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer has to do with how you exchange information and provide your partners with the right information at the right time, in front of the right prospects. And also these days, it's on the right device. And that's just not happening enough these days. We still have companies using outdated portals, old PRM systems. We have them using 3 or 4 or 5 cobbled together systems to try and get information to folks. Some of them still aren't mobile enabled. But how do you then support those partners who need information to move a deal through the pipeline, just like one of your direct sales reps would? And too often we see those partners being the last ones on the list to get access to the information. So when you're mapping out your buyer's journey for your sales reps, when you're providing them with content and training and sales tools and resources, when you're doing competitive research, when you're bringing on additional partners for yourself, and when you're building out your customer success and support teams and your internal sales and financial and other pieces of your team, you've got to make sure that those partners have access to those people, and not necessarily always just through a portal, but that person-to-person engagement so that they can actually access this information. And having those partner, that people perspective, I think really adds to that.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, trust and authenticity in the market is what everyone's looking for. They've been oversold, they've been underwhelmed. So this idea of a partner being able to have trust with a customer, they know their worst fears, their biggest nightmares, but they may or may not know everything about your IP, how you can help them solve that problem. When those two combine, where the provider can really embrace the partner's knowledge of the customer and the local market, and also be able to articulate the value of the combined solution, you have so much value creation. You have bigger deals, you have accelerated deal time, your ASP goes up, you're getting larger deals, you're getting more delighted customers, higher NPS scores. I mean, that is really strong key, is to bake into your plans how you're going to train, enable, and transfer knowledge up front, and then test and confirm along the way.
Yeah, and when you're doing that, we often, again, look at having these partner portals, legacy PRM platforms, and we end up looking at and turning them into as dumping grounds of information, dumping grounds of content. And a lot of folks look at this and say, well, it's a passive platform. And I ask people to compare it a lot to how you use tools like Salesforce and Marketo and the other ones, where you would never call Salesforce your sales portal or Marketo your marketing portal. This is software. These are active systems. You have to be able to look at it and say, how are we actively helping and engaging our partners versus just providing them a portal that they log into whenever they need to find information? How can you be more active in providing them what they need and empowering them? And that has to do with the next topic we kind of talk about, which is collaboration. And collaboration a little bit overflows with culture, which we'll talk about too. But, it really goes back into these two things that you see here: management and control versus empowerment and enablement and empowerment. And for a long time, it's really been focused on management and control. Complex partner programs, a lack of trust, a lack of visibility, where the partners are overmanaged because you don't really trust how they're going to go out there and go sell and go grow and go support your customers. Those days have to be over, though, and it has to be more about enablement and empowerment, and doing that through a modern, transparent, and simple system.
I think this is such a killer topic to pause on for almost everybody who's maybe listening, who's even hears the term partner or partner system, probably thinks about this: arcane, heavy, slow, not accurate, not real time, and therefore we don't take it seriously. The reality is you can't have empowerment without systems, without transparency, and without that you have this trust factor. Without trust, we have micromanagement, we have taking deals direct, you name it. You have every bad habit that we've ever seen in bad partner experiences by the lack of this system, the lack of transparency, and the lack of the culture around the system, so we can empower. We know where people are. We know they're on track. You'll never have any anxiety of pulling a deal direct because you know your partner's getting everything they need from you to have a successful pursuit.
And the amazing thing about this that I always think about is how almost natural a lot of these things are to think about when it comes to your direct team. But then when it rolls over to your channel partners and to your indirect sales team, these things become secondary. And that stuff needs to stop being the case. There's no reason that those partners cannot be looked at and treated as such a valuable resource and as valuable a resource as your direct team. And you would never go in there and micromanage and treat your direct team in a way you'd oftentimes would treat partners, and that needs to change. And so we'll come back to that a little bit more when we talked about culture, but I think, one of the important topics here, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is customer success and is the customer. We hosted our first conference about 4 months ago in November, and it's amazing how a conference around channel sales and marketing ended up taking such a really interesting turn in terms of customer success, which ended up being really the main topic there. And I think it goes back to showing how, within the sales cycle and within business these days, customers own the sales cycle, they own the relationship more than ever before because of the way digital sales and marketing have taken over pre-sales, and because of the way and the value that recurring revenue and churn and making customers happy has increased in terms of business. And I love this quote that I heard, and I just put a SaaS prophet on there, but it was actually at a conference I went to a couple months ago where, don't just focus on making customers happy. You've got to make them successful these days. Happiness should just be part of doing business with you. Making them successful is what you've really got to focus on. And so when we look at partners now, we look at what they've been and how they've been positioning companies for quite a while now. We've looked at how they accelerate sales. And it's very true that partners, should be and can be and should be an important part of how you develop and build out your brand, and how they help you increase brand net recognition, again, vertically, horizontally, in different geographies, how they can help you generate demand. So put more leads into the pipeline and move those deals through the pipeline and do it more efficiently. How do you get out to different markets, different geographies, different types of customers and prospects, while not spending too much, while keeping your costs in control? And so that's always been kind of part of the reason that companies go and develop partner programs, not just part of the reason, but the main reason. But these days, it's so much more about how partners improve customer value and outcomes. And so when you are going and selling solutions that are built on a recurring revenue model, built on a subscription model, and to be honest, even built on some of the more legacy on-premise models, these days, like John was saying, the renewal type of mentality has changed. And these days it's about customer expectations and how those are set, customer adoption, so how you bring those customers on board, and then how you make them successful using your product or your solution, and then how you grow those customers. So how you grow wallet share and help those customers grow themselves, and then help them grow revenue with you and through both of your businesses. And so when you look at that, there's no reason that you would not think about this statement in terms of, if you want to go fast, oftentimes you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And this is where a lot of the cultural piece comes back into it, where we talk more about culture.
I was just going to pause on this one. This is where I do think it's an industry that we're in that's so fast paced. It's changing all the time that a lot of times we don't think long term. We just think in the next 6 months. And maybe people haven't realized yet, depending what your model is, about how important it is to get this partner concept right. I've seen every old school partner mentality. They just don't work. The end of quarter, you can really damage your customer relationships. You can damage your employee relationships, your personal brand. Partnering at its core is a better way of life. It's a better way to hit sustainable revenue for the long haul. Now, it takes more work up front. You have to share and bring these folks in. You got to share your values. You have to really do the recruiting right. But if you really can take the time to build out that long-term plan, you'll find this is a much better way of life. So
about going together, we look at, John kind of mentioned this earlier, successful partnering isn't just starting a partner program. Oftentimes it's the result of great leadership. And we look at, modern, dynamic, culture-driven, customer-first thinkers within an organization, those types of leaders who are building great companies, where partnership is a result of that.
I would even expand it. Think about the word partner too. I mean, even in your personal life, who would ever bring in 400 random people to be your partner or your friend or your trusted advisor? The modern CIO today is looking for partnership agreements. The modern CIO today no longer just buys software. They are responsible for the digital transformation of their firm, and they are looking for a partnership to drive top-line revenue. They're looking for the same things. And that requires a different way of thinking about it. It requires a different way of modeling out your approach and really rethinking all the tools you're using, how you're doing your budgets, how you're building your calendar, how you're decorating your materials, to make sure that the concept of partnering is center to everything you do.
And I think that kind of goes back to the point that businesses today are ecosystems, and they are touching so many other companies, people, brands, parts of an organization. A partnership, if you build a partner program right, it can kind of sit at the core of that building and reach out and touch so many different areas of the company and have a huge impact on that. So we kind of talked about this before in the leadership, but the partner programs these days, you've got to make sure it's simple, it's digital, it's integrated. The days of complexity, the days of manually doing processes, sending content back and forth, relying on email and different types of kind of outdated technologies is changed. It's different. The days of having a separate channel stack to manage your partners versus giving them access and leveraging the existing technology that you're already making investments in, those days are over. It's got to be integrated. You've got to look at data. It's got to be digital. And by gosh, it has to be much more simple. You've got to break down those barriers that make it difficult to do business with you. It's got to be easy to work together. So it goes back to, I kind of said this at the very beginning, it's not if you start a partner program, it's when. Because, now we say why, why in the SaaS economy, why in today's recurring revenue digital economy where customers obviously own the sales cycle and are more important than ever, why doesn't every company have a partner program? Why aren't every single company starting to think about this early on in their life cycle? It does not have to be once you hit 10, 20, 30, $100 million in revenue. If you look at the leaders who are building the companies these days and you look at how they're trying to do it, a partner program can and should be part of that initial planning so that it's part of the cultural growth of the organization. Because the impact, if executed right, is just indisputable. It's the sky's the limit for you. So I always like to throw this quote at the very end. This is I'll be honest. We had this quote in our vows when I got married, and I always use this when I have a proposal. It's kind of one of those things I'm sure we've all heard. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. This was stated by a person who could not see and could not hear, but knew this. And so, it's one of those things that's just intuitively true. We need to look at it not only in our lives, but how we grow our business. Alone we can do so together we can do so little. Together we can do so much.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that, Scott, quickly. A lot of people are listening to Simon Sinek's Together It's Better, and the productivity benefits of everything you're talking about, how partnering. And my advice, no matter how big or small your firm is, make sure that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Make sure that you value it, you post it on your walls, you measure it. Have it in your reward system, have it budgeted, have it celebrated, and most importantly, have it on your calendar. See those partners and see and inspect all the systems around it to make sure that it's a vibrant part of your business plan.
So as we kind of run down on time here, just a couple of additional resources. Not to promote Allbound too much, but this is what we live and sleep. So we create tons of content and resources. We've got this really awesome podcast we put together now. It's become one of the top B2B podcasts on iTunes. We have great speakers every week. So you can check that out on iTunes. Our blog, we're creating 50, 60 pieces of content a month. We have partner success kits. We've got tools to help you measure the effectiveness of your channel, like My Channel Score. It lets you actually see how you perform against your peers and get suggestions on how you can improve your own partner program. So lots of really cool resources as you continue to either plan your partner program, grow it out, make it more digital, make it more culture and customer driven. That's really what we're focused on. There's a ton of stuff you can find there. So I'm going to kind of turn it back now and see if we've gotten any Q&A and questions here. Let me kind of shift over from PowerPoint back over to the Google chat room here. So a couple questions from the Twitter feed. How do you leverage channel partners for your account-based strategy? That's a great question. We have we're really big believers in account-based marketing, account-based sales. I've gotten to know the folks at companies like Engagio and Terminus really well, and even wrote an article a little while back called Account-Based Partnering. Account-based partnering is really focused on again, going back and making sure that you're bringing in the partners that are most effective and aligned to your business. And then taking those campaigns or those activities that you're building out for account-based sales and marketing, so whether they're a specific customers or prospects that you're going after, and specific mail or direct or email or campaigns to go and target them, and in making those available to your partners to go and target those folks, but also aligning those prospects and customers, sharing the data. Go and talk to those partners and say, hey, here's the 100 accounts that we're looking to go after right now. What relationships do you have with them? And then how can we work together and go target those specific audiences?
I couldn't agree with that more. We just had an exercise with Aptio the other day at BMC where we're sharing account information, sharing the different buying habits. Integrity is built that way. Trust is built that way. Some people get nervous about it, but you have to show some leadership by showing the information that you have. Give that knowledge and that wisdom that you've accumulated and put that out there, and you'll see it come back in a reciprocal manner, and you get some really great productivity gains from that.
Yeah, so I think definitely, there's a strong potential and opportunity to tie in your partner program with account-based strategies around account-based marketing, account-based sales, even, account-based data. We've done some stuff with a company called Node.io, if you want to go check them out, where they're really more about account-based data. So lots of really cool stuff that you can do around that. Let me get a couple more questions here. One was around gamification. How do you gamify, or what kind of benefits is gamifying the sales process bring to you, and how do you start? And that's something that we also talk about quite a bit with our platform, and what we try and talk to our customers about is how do you start pointing those partners and pointing those folks as you work with in the right direction at the right content. And so there's a lot of different opportunities, and there's a lot of different ways you can reward those folks. If you are doing a product launch, for example, or growing a new incentive program, how do you actually bring those partners in and gamify the actual activities? So looking at micro moments in terms of how you get your partners to be successful versus, just looking at it from a macro perspective. So does that mean we want our partners to go in and take this sales training, take this quiz, follow that up by sending this email, and then share this content on social media, then register the deal, move the deal through pipeline, and make sure they do a kickoff successfully? If you can gamify and actually assign points or assign value for each of those different opportunities, you can really start pushing your partners into specific activities that will make them successful. So instead of just kind of giving them a portal to log into, or they can kind of bounce around and do anything they want, take them down a path. Take them down the proven path that is successful based on the history and data that you have. And I think that's a really valuable way you can bring gamification, and we're glad to show and talk a bit more about that maybe sometime in the future. One more question here, as we have just a couple minutes left. The easiest framework for choosing partners: build those partner personas. I cannot say enough about that. Just like when you would go to market for your company and build customer personas or build buyer personas, go and focus and build partner personas that align to your business and the types of companies that work well with you, and how you can build symbiotic relationships. And just like you would do that with the buyer persona, and then try and build strategies to go find out where those buyers are and start finding out where they hang out, you're going to do the same thing with your partners. You're going to go figure out where people with these types of, or businesses with these types of personas, go spend their time, and you're going to go and try and recruit and bring them on board and provide them with the tools and resources to make them successful.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's what's missed in most companies. They just skip it, they get to it later, and a lot of the upfront work on the personas isn't done, and you end up with a myriad of just half-baked partnerships. So it's great. It's a great answer.
Yeah, again, and it goes back to kind of the account-based way of doing things. Instead of going out there and just throwing a net, see what you can bring in. Go work with the spear and try and target and specifically hit those specific partners you want to work with, and focus on making them really, really successful. So instead of having that 1090 or that 2080 type of partner program, you've got maybe 20 or 100 really good partners, and you're focused specifically on each one of those individually. So that's the questions we had, and I think we're just hitting the 35-minute mark. We're running out of time. So thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully this gave you some great information about if and when and how to build a partner program. And again, feel free to reach out with, follow us on Twitter at @GoAllbound. Reach out to us directly. Our website is allbound.com. You can find a lot of great stuff on there, and we're glad to chat with you in the future. So thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.